Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below. Welcome, everyone. So today, we're doing something a bit different, more of a regional news report.
That's right. We'll be looking at recent political and economic news across the North Atlantic. We'll group it by country.
And just a heads up, we're sticking strictly to the facts as presented in our sources. No opinions, no speculation from us on this one.
Exactly. We're assuming you, the listener, have a basic grasp of the North Atlantic context, so we won't dwell on the fundamentals.
All right, let's dive in. Where should we start? Iceland seems to have had quite a bit going on.
Indeed. Let's begin there. First up, some really concerning allegations coming out of Reykjavik.
Gang rape allegations, specifically.
Yes. 2 women filed complaints. They allege gang rapes happened in the Vesterberg district of Reykjavik.
And these weren't isolated incidents linked together.
Well, they allegedly occurred about 2 weeks apart last month, but the sources say 3 men are under investigation in both cases.
Both cases. Okay.
Oh.
And the detail.
The women allege they were drugged and then assaulted in a flat.
And the suspects. Have they been detained?
That's a key point of concern, actually. The police didn't request custody for the suspects.
Right, and that's caused some reaction, I imagine.
Definitely. Drífa Snædal, who's the spokesperson for Stigmot, that's an Icelandic support center for survivors of sexual violence, she expressed deep concern. She called the suspects extremely dangerous men and worried that they're free.
Because the alleged acts seemed planned.
She highlighted that, yes, that they seemed organized, premeditated, happening twice like that. She also brought up a broader issue.
Which is?
The low rate of reporting sexual violence to the police in Iceland. Apparently, only about 7 to 17% of people who contact support groups like Stigmot end up going to the police.
Wow, that's low.
Her quote was pretty direct. It's obvious that people don't have much faith in achieving justice through the legal system. That really speaks volumes about trust, or lack thereof.
And Stigmot actually sees more survivors than the official numbers suggest.
Significantly more, according to Snædal. They typically support between 12 and 30 survivors of gang rape each year. Compare that to the police stats for the capital area, an average of up to 7 reported annually in recent years.
And this year?
6 have already been reported to the police this year alone, so yeah.
Okay, a very serious situation there. Shifting focus slightly, still in Iceland NATO activity.
Yes, NATO warships. Part of their standing fleet arrived in Reykjavik Harbor.
For what purpose?
The annual anti-submarine exercise, Dynamic Mongoose. It started Monday and runs until May 9th.
Which nations are involved?
The ships currently there are from the Netherlands, Germany, and Poland. 3 of those are part of NATO's standing naval forces.
And where will the exercise take place?
South of Iceland, and also in the waters between Iceland and Norway.
It's quite a coordinated effort.
It is. The Icelandic Coast Guard worked with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs Defense Directorate and NATO's naval command based in the UK. Iceland's participating too, with their Coast Guard vessel Freyja and its helicopter unit.
So Iceland's actively involved.
Absolutely. Shows their ongoing role in NATO security.
All right. One more item from Iceland, concerns about social housing. This is in Akureyri.
Yes, in Akureyri, up north. Residents living near some social housing units are reporting feeling unsafe.
Why is that? What kind of issues?
The reports mention property damage, noise issues, even break-ins. The housing in question is specifically for people with complex needs, often involving mental health and substance use challenges.
And residents have complained?
Repeatedly to the municipality. Some are apparently even asking the town to buy their flats because they want to move.
How many of these units are there? Is it a concentration issue?
That seems to be a major part of it. There are 17 specialized units in total, but 8 are in 2 adjacent buildings in one area, Odemeri, and 3 more nearby in Holtaverfi, so quite clustered.
And community meetings have highlighted this.
Yeah, a recent meeting brought up increases in break-ins, vandalism, and harassment. A briefing to the town's welfare council also noted extensive and mixed substance use among residents and their guests.
Leading to more emergency calls.
Exactly. More calls for police and paramedics due to conflicts, violence, property damage, noise, the whole lot. And there seems to be agreement, even from social services, that having so many units packed together isn't ideal.
Are there plans to change that?
Yes, plans are underway. They intend to build 5 smaller houses in a different area, Sieverfi. Longer term, maybe 8 to 10 more units to rehouse people from Oderi and Holtaverfi.
The goal being smaller clusters.
Right. a limit of maybe 4 or 5 residents per location. Plus, they're planning more supervision, better support services, and more dialogue with the community.
And something about transitional housing.
Yes, they recognized a need for an intermediate level of support called fungaheimili, basically, transitional housing.
Okay, let's move across the water now to Greenland and Denmark. There's been a legal change affecting Greenlandic families.
A significant one. The Danish parliament passed a new law stopping the use of certain assessments, parental competence assessments, or FKU in child custody cases involving Greenlandic families living in Denmark.
Why were these assessments controversial?
The main criticism was that they weren't adapted for Greenlandic language or culture, just didn't fit the context.
And that had real consequences.
Oh, absolutely. A report from 2022 showed kids from Greenlandic families in Denmark were 5 times more likely to end up in care outside the home compared to Danish kids.
5 times. Wow. Was there a reason cited for that disparity?
Another report in 2023 pointed to Danish caseworkers often lacking knowledge of Greenlandic culture and language, leading to misunderstandings.
Oh,
In
yeah.
a sense,
So it's a new system.
Instead of FKU, they'll use a special unit under VRISO, that's the Danish National Board of Social Services. This unit will have specific expertise in Greenlandic language and culture.
And what about ongoing cases?
Good question. The new unit will also review about 460 existing custody cases where those FKU tests were used. The law kicked in on May 1st.
How have Greenlandic politicians reacted?
Positively, largely. Ajaja Chemnitz from IA and Aki Matilda Hokayam from Nalarak both called it a big step, an important one for recognizing indigenous rights.
But any reservations?
Yeah, some practical concerns were raised, making sure cases are processed quickly under the new system and ensuring it has enough resources. Always the challenge with new initiatives.
Sticking with Greenland and Denmark, there's also a debate about Greenland's place in the Danish parliament.
Yes, Kuno Fenker, he's a member of Greenland's parliament, and Atsi Sartut for the Nalarak party. He's arguing Greenland shouldn't have representatives in the Danish Folketing anymore.
What's his reasoning?
He basically says the Rigsfællesskabet, the Danish realm structure, isn't based on equality. Greenland's under the Danish crown. Sovereignty is limited, He thinks reforms are needed, mentioning a paragraph 21, though the source doesn't say which document that's from.
And he feels the current representation leads to problems.
He argues it results in political interference. He suggested alternatives like a free association model or maybe something like the EU structure.
That sounds like a major shift. Would it need public approval?
Oh, definitely. He acknowledged it would require a referendum in Greenland.
What about areas Denmark handles now, like defense or justice?
Fenker suggests Greenlandic legislation should take over those areas, with processing happening in Greenland, even if Denmark technically holds ultimate responsibility for now. A sort of phased approach.
Interesting. And there was a high-level meeting recently, too.
Yes, the head of Greenland's government, Naalakkersuisut, Jens Frederik Nielsen, met with the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen.
What is on the agenda?
Modernizing the relationship. They talked about shared history, including what Frederiksen called the dark chapters, but also focused on the future, Greenland's development economy.
Is Denmark open to changes, like a new self-government act?
Frederiksen indicated she is open to reviewing it, maybe even creating a new one. And Denmark seems willing to invest more in Greenlandic society.
What does Greenland want?
Naalakkersuisut, under Nielsen, wants formal negotiations to renew the Rigsfællesskabet. He stressed wanting unity with those sharing values in the current global climate.
And changing the perception of Greenland.
Yeah, he wants to move away from the idea that Greenland is just an extra bill for Denmark. Reviewing the Self-Government Act seems to be a key starting point for negotiations.
So development within the realm, but on new terms.
That seems to be the message. Nielsen also talked about the U.S. relationship ready for a stronger partnership, more development, but based on respect. He had that strong line, Greenland will never be a piece of property that can be bought by anyone.
A clear reference to past comments. Are they open to meeting former President Trump?
Both leaders said they are.
And those dark chapters Frederiksen mentioned. Any specifics?
She didn't rule out a reconciliation commission, possibly linked to the Spiral case. That's a reference to the involuntary contraception campaign targeting Greenlandic women in the 60s and 70s. A very sensitive issue. A political analyst, Jens Ringberg, thinks an apology from Denmark about the Spiral case is likely once investigations are complete. Nielsen, for his part, also commented that the U.S. hasn't always acted respectfully towards Greenland.
Okay, and following up on the defense angle, Denmark's defense minister is visiting Greenland.
That's right. Troels Lund Poulsen is heading to Nuuk. He's meeting Greenland's Foreign Affairs Minister, Vivian Motzfeldt.
To discuss that defense agreement from 2021.
Exactly, the Arctis Capacity Setback. It allocated 1.5 billion kroner for things like long-range drones for the Arctic radar stations.
But hasn't implementation been slow?
It has. As of early this year, several parts hadn't been put into action. Poulsen himself admitted too little being done through shifting governments.
What's the goal of the agreement?
Broadly, to boost the military's ability to monitor the Arctic and support civilian operations there. It was a response to growing geopolitical interest in the region from, the major powers.
Is she visiting anywhere else?
Yes, he's going to Station Nord with King Frederick. That's a super northernmost manned airfield used by the Sirius Patrol.
The Sirius Patrol. They do surveillance.
Surveillance and police authority in uninhabited northeast Greenland. Sled dogs, harsh conditions, the real deal.
This visit seems timely, given the other discussions about Greenland and U.S. interest.
Absolutely. It all ties together: the strategic importance, the Denmark-Greenland relationship, international interest.
Okay, let's hop over to the Faroe Islands. News about Royal Greenland. That's a Greenlandic company, right?
Yes, a major Greenlandic fishing company. And the news isn't great financially. They reported a pre-tax loss of 196 million Danish kroner for the last year.
Ouch. How was their turnover?
5.6 billion DKK. That was actually a slight decrease from the year before. The company basically said the result wasn't satisfactory and that 2024 involved tough decisions to try and get things back on track for the future. No turnaround yet, another operating deficit.
Difficult times for them. But while a Greenlandic company faces issues, the Faroes seem to be showing support for Greenland.
Yes, definitely. The Faroes Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade visited Nuuk recently, met with Greenlandic ministers.
What was the message?
Strong emphasis on Faroes' support and solidarity with Greenland.
What did they discuss specifically?
With Vivian Motzfeldt, Greenland's foreign minister, talks covered the tense global situation, how it impacts the Arctic, and the upcoming joint chairmanship of the Arctic Council Greenland, Faroe Islands, and Denmark take over in May. Also, just generally strengthening cooperation between the Faroes and Greenland.
And with the industry minister.
Met with Nija Nathanielsen, discussed business priorities in both countries, opportunities to cooperate more on trade, transport, that sort of thing. They stressed collaboration among all the Nordic countries. The Faroes minister also stopped by the Greenlandic parliament in Etsi.
So strengthening those West Nordic ties.
Seems to be a clear priority.
And one more point relating to the Faroes and the Danish realm structure.
Ah, yes, linked to that meeting between Nielsen and Hendriksen. DR, the Danish broadcaster, reported on a potential shift in how the realm might function.
What kind of shift?
The possibility that Greenland, and presumably the Faroe Islands too, could take over more areas of responsibility from Denmark, but Denmark might continue to fund them, fully or partly.
That is different. Wasn't the old way you take it over, you pay for it?
Pretty much an unwritten rule, yeah. So this would be a significant change in the funding model, a way to perhaps modernize the realm, as Fredrickson put it.
Interesting potential development there. Okay, finally, let's cross over to the Shetland Islands. Something about fishing.
Yes, specifically future fishing arrangements with the EU post-Brexit. Alistair Carmichael, he's the MP for Orkney and Shetland, and chairs the all-party parliamentary group on fisheries.
Okay.
He's launched a call for evidence, asking the fishing industry, stakeholders, anyone involved for their views.
Why now?
Because the review of the UK-EU trade and cooperation agreement is coming up. The sort of adjustment period for fisheries ends in 2026, so they want input on priorities before then.
To influence the UK's position.
Essentially, yes. To gather evidence to inform the debate in Parliament. Carmichael stressed wanting a deal that supports a viable and prosperous fishing community.
So he wants wide participation.
Urging everyone with an interest to submit their views to build the strongest possible case. The deadline is Friday, May 9th.
Okay, good to know for anyone listening in Shetland or involved in the industry. So to quickly recap this regional report, we've touched on serious justice concerns and NATO activity in Iceland alongside social housing issues.
That major shifts in Greenland-Denmark relations, the end of those controversial custody tests, talks about Greenland's representation and potentially a new self-government act.
Plus, financial challenges for Royal Greenland, but stronger ties signaled between the Faroe Islands and Greenland, and hints of changes to the Danish realm's funding structure.
And finally, Shetland looking ahead to post-Brexit fishing negotiations with the EU. quite a bit happening across the region.
Definitely highlights the dynamic nature of the North Atlantic right now, wouldn't you say? Lots of internal adjustments and external pressures interacting.
For sure. It really makes you think about how these distinct places are navigating their identities and relationships in a rapidly changing world.
Like and subscribe to PalsFundamentals on YouTube for more videos like this. Sources linked below.